Miss Rosalía was former president of Ecuador and also full member of the World Academy of Art and Science. She's professor, right, Professor Rosalía? Yes, and you have the floor. You can present yourself and you have the floor.
Okay. Well, my name is Rosalía Arteaga, former president of the Republic of Ecuador. I was also Minister of Education and Vice Minister of Culture in my country, and General Secretary of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization with headquarters in Brazil. Nowadays, I am the leader of Spanish University, president of UNIR University, Spanish Online University, and I am also leading FIDAL Foundation, the Foundation for Integration and Development in Latin America, and that's working mostly on education. I'm an author. I write books, poetry, books for kids and youngsters, and also I am a speaker in several places in the world. And nice to be here with you, sharing some ideas about what's happening in Latin America, the future of Latin America, and the crisis of multilateralism. Of course, as most of us, I think I am concerned about what's happening in Latin America right now, and in concrete in my own country, Ecuador. We are under the attack of the criminal organizations, and I think it is very common in most of our countries. In our case, we suffered the increase of violence, especially with the recruiting of kids, 8, 9 years, and also teenagers. Probably it is not so strange for other countries, but in Ecuador it's the first time that it is happening. And I think that the organizations, the multilateral organizations, have to be more proactive in put the countries together and to join the leaders to have a strategy about this, because it is international criminality that is coming here. We feel like the cartels of narcotraffic, like from Colombia, from Mexico, and other countries are operating in most of our countries in Latin America. We have, of course, things in common, like the increase of corruption in the political arena, and also how the criminality is going through the courts, is going to the parliaments, and it is, I think, an issue that must convocate all the people in our countries, the academics, the politicians, the scientists, to like work in this kind of a strategy, and to be more exigent about the organizations, international and intergovernmental organizations. There are some in our continent, like the Organization of American States and CEPAL and others, and even the one that I worked for, the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organizations. I must remember that a lot of illegalities are committed in the Amazon, because people talk about deforestation, but don't talk that most of the coca plantations are on the Amazon region, and also that a lot of situations linked with minerals, illegalities, operations of criminal bands that are taking the mining issues to clean the money that comes from narcotraffic and others. There is a complex situations all around the world, of course, but I call the attention to our region, to Latin America, and think about big other problems, because being most of our countries not developed countries, we are suffering most, for example, climate change issues, not only in the Amazon basin, but also in the other regions of our countries. If we put together this complex situation, narcotraffic, organized crime, climate change, corruption in governments, loss of democratic values, that it's another issue that I want to call the attention, because people are happy sometimes to have strong governments and then doesn't worry about the lack of democracy. Then the vision of the continent is not very optimistic. Even in the past, myself, I call Latin America the continent of the hope, because we have young generations, we have a lot of resources, the best biodiversity in the world. We have all to be successful, but what's happening? That's the big question, and how we can work together to have a better continent, a better Latin America that have big engines like Brazil, like Mexico, like Argentina, biggest countries that in the past, for example, Argentina was one of the most developed countries in the world. But what happens with our resources? Where they are going to, how the people and the politicians are managing these resources, these big resources, why people are lacking of hope and trying to go to emigrate to other countries. Migration is another big issue, especially Venezuelan migration. Ecuador, for example, is a small country in the panorama, in the scope of Latin America, especially in South America. It's one of the smallest countries. We have 18 million of inhabitants, but we have 500,000 of Venezuelans, 1 million of Colombians, and it's also a heavy situation in our country. And it happens if you see Colombia or Peru and other countries, the migration starts to be a big issue. I don't say a big problem, because usually I am open and I think that people has to move freely in the world. But of course, it is strong for the governments how to manage, how to handle these situations in the middle of the poverty, in the middle of lack of democracy that we are living. I think I put all these issues on the table: organized crime, mining used by organized crime, recruiting of new generations, climate change, corruption, and in the other hand, these big possibilities that we have with biodiversity, good quality of people, and all the things that I mentioned. Thank you very much. I'm sorry not to be more optimistic, but the reality in our countries is not very optimistic right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Arteaga. No doubt, we share the same feelings nowadays. It's not, but let's talk more when by occasion of the debates. Let's go ahead. Let's invite now Miss Danielle Sandi Pinheiro to take floor. And Danielle is professor of economy, macroeconomy, if I'm sure, at the University of Brasilia, also fellow of the World Academy of Art and Science, and we'll try to discuss with us back to the basics. What is a tariff? You have the floor, please, Ms.
Okay.
Daniela.
Okay, thank you very much. I used to, at the past, in the early of the 20th century, to study multilateralism, economic integration, and nowadays we just forget about this. And now what we heard is about tariff war of tariffs. So get to the basics from macroeconomic theory, trade economic theory, and microeconomics. This is a PDF. Can you see this slide?
Yes.
Can you see? Okay, from microeconomic theory, this is not class, but just foundations of my point of view. From microeconomic theory, we have the supply curve and demand curve. And in the case of tax and quotas and these kinds of trade policy tools, we see that the producers' gain is so small comparing to consumers' losses. The producers' gain, in this case, that we are seeing nowadays, import tariff or quota, and nowadays is a tariff war, unilaterally from unilateral way, of course, but the producer's gain is given by area A, and the consumer's losses is given by areas A, B, and C. In a general case, when there is no a war, let me say a tariff that aims to eliminate imports, of course, there are gains and losses, and of course, always the consumers' losses are bigger than producers' gain. Okay, the producer's gain is given by area A, and the consumer loss is given by areas A, B, C, and D. D is the gain in the case of a tariff is a gain from the governments, of course, because there are tax. So this is basic macroeconomics, so basic, stimulate our thoughts. In my point of view, of course, this kind of theory, microeconomic theory, is called welfare economic theory. Is based on many other economic theoretical tools and thoughts. But of course, what we have when we are in front of our tariff war, unilateral tariff war like this. Is the biggest way of dead weight was the biggest policy costs, efficient losses, economic efficiency is going down. And what are the tariff objectives of this kind of war that we are seeing nowadays? Of course, externalities. There are market failures that justify policies. Externalities, lack of information, are just some of these kind of market failures. But externalities, what's going on nowadays? What's going on? I believe that in line with Professor Rosalía told us, there are, can you see this small picture? There are power externalities, an entire chain of interests, economic, political, vested interests that affects the social power relations. This is a power triangle, okay? And of course, it's so small. We have social power relations, business cycles, and governance. This is an entire chain of interests. And to justify unilateral points of view and tariff wars, doesn't it justify a producer's gain? Because beyond consumers' loss, there is losses or gains for the entire society, the people, the entire chain of productions. And the question that I would like to put is, and how about the spillover effects of power externalities? Externalities in economic theory could be positive or negative. The tariff war we are seeing nowadays that spreads, spillovers, an entire system of negative power externalities. But considering the social power relations, the business cycles, and the governance structures, we can spill over positive power externalities. And the multilateralism could be a way to spill over positive power externalities, considering the entire chain of relations, social power relations, governance, and business cycles. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Danielle, for bringing this approach, for this economic approach with challenges from about externalities and spillover effects. Thank you so much. And now we have Professor Neantro Saavedra-Rivano, that's a visiting professor here at the University of Brazil in Brazil. He's from Chile and also a fellow from the academy here. Please, Professor, have the floor.
Thank you very much, Manuelita. Let me make this bigger. Okay. It's a pleasure to be talking to this select group of colleagues from the World Academy of Arts and Science. And so I will share with you a presentation. Well, I'm going to take up the subject of this session, which is on globalization, multilateralism, and regional integration. And so the title is The Crisis of Multilateralism and Regional Integration, from Post-War Consensus to Contemporary Challenges. Let me see. Okay. Well, we all are very much aware of the current situation when many things that were taken for granted until a few years or even a few months ago are now totally under discussion. And so we are looking at potentially a new global economic order. And we do not know whether this is just the beginning of something more lasting, or whether it is something that will pass in the next 3-4 years. At any rate, the amount of confusion, of trouble that it is creating is very, very important. I live in Brazil, and Brazil has been one of the countries most affected by all of this. I just was watching President of Brazil, President Lula, who was announcing measures he is taking to deal with this situation. He seemed very energized. It seems that the crisis strengthens him, which is good, of course. Let's go a little back to the post-war, Second World War. Well, we know that not only the destruction, the sheer destruction that happened during the World War, but also the chaos that existed in the period in between First and Second World War really made people think. And this new consensus appeared that favored open markets and increased economic interdependence. That was seen not only as a recipe for progress, for economic growth, but also for peace. So peace and prosperity. Private companies, of course, liked this very much because it widened enormously the scope of their markets for trade, capital flows, technological exchange, and services in general. We saw institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which was the precursor to the World Trade Organization. All this was decided even before the end of the war at this famous agreement, Bretton Woods Agreement. So that was the beginning of a new international, new global order. The US dollar, of course, was sanctioned as really the basis of the international monetary system. And the United States was kind of not only co-creator, but guarantor, and one of the big beneficiaries of that order. More or less soon after that, yes, almost in a parallel way, we saw the appearance of movements of regional integration. I mention this because it is becoming very important today again. So we had first in Europe, small group of countries started. Then it grew and became what is today the European Union. In South America also in the 1960s, inspired very much by the success in Europe. Mercosur was created. In Asia, we also saw the emergence of Asia. By the way, this map here is wrong because Australia is not a member of Asia. So there was some tension between two possible views of regional integration. They could either be building blocks for a stronger globalization, or there could be like barriers that would preclude globalization for really taking place. So it would be stumbling blocks. I believe this expression was created by Jagdish Bhagwati, who, by the way, was a member of my thesis committee in Colombia. One important thing is that while globalization was very much favored by enterprises, by private enterprises, and of course supported through multilateral institutions such as the WTO, which were government institutions. In the case of regional integration, governments were the main actor. So in some places, like in ASEAN, for instance, the enthusiasm of governments came together with enthusiasm coming from private enterprises. So ASEAN really has done very well. In the case of Mercosur, that was not the case. Mercosur was mostly, and still is, an effort by governments, not so much by private enterprises. They take part, of course, but they are not really the soul of the movement. European Union also is quite balanced, the participation of both private sector and government sector. At any rate, this tension between these two possible futures of regional blocks creates this challenge of ensuring that regional agreements complement rather than undermine multilateral principles. Thus, that challenge is present even as we speak. And now we come to these years, what we have seen, which was, of course, announced perhaps from the first Trump administration, but it becomes much more in force now. Now that Mr. Trump is really unbounded, yes, he really can do the things that he really wants to do. So we have all this. Well, I am just talking about the trade policy, because there are many other things like disregard for environment, attack on educational institutions, even occupation of Washington, D.C. that is taking place these days. But let's concentrate on trade policy. We see that all this post-war consensus on trade was really has been broken. We have economic policy being taken in quite a unilateral way. Tariffs is the weapon of choice, and they are decided in a quite arbitrary way, and they can be changed from one day to the next. In addition, of course, regarding regional integration, well, the United States is a member of a regional integration group, the North American agreement, composed of Mexico and Canada as well. But it seems as if there were not such a thing. The United States also withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And in general, we see little regard for multilateral institutions, United Nations, World Health Organization. In the case of the World Trade Organization, which will be the most relevant multilateral institution, this even predates the current administration. Already, under the Biden administration, the United States blocked appointments to its appellate body, which is really at the heart of the organization. It is a dispute settlement mechanism. Of course, this has continued. So the WTO is almost irrelevant nowadays. Instead of multilateralism, we have bilateral relations, which are on the basis of who is stronger, and always is the United States, who is the strongest. With China, of course, it's a different matter because they are both more or less, they have more or less equal power. And diplomacy is transactional, so multilateral frameworks are out. That leads to an erosion of trust, cooperation, and raises very fundamental questions about the future of global governance, not only for trade, but also for many other areas, like the environment, for instance. So in this context, we see that regional integration re-emerges as a potential defensive strategies against this new protectionism. The strengthening regional blocks enhances the bargaining power on the global stage of the members. Also, increasing intra-regional trade and investment fosters economic stability within blocks. One good example of that is the recent movements towards an alliance between China, Japan, and South Korea. That kind of agreement had been in the works for a long time, but now it is reappearing because it is seen as a possible way for those countries to be stronger, face to the arbitrariness coming from the United States. We could say that the challenge now for all countries is to navigate this fractured world. Different countries, of course, will have different strategies. China is, I think, is in itself because they have much power, especially what relates to this rare earth, the materials that are central to AI and many other technologies of today. And so regional integration, of course, is, I think, it's important for many countries. Collaborative solutions, even beyond the regional integration, will become more and more important. And that's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Neantro. It was amazing, your approach with this new protectionism and the role of the multilateralism and the regional integration nowadays. Thank you so much. Now we have time enough to debate and to have questions for all the panelists.
We have Professor Fadwa will be our last panelist. I would like to introduce you. Professor Fadwa is former professor of anthropology at Qatar University, where she was head of the Department of Social Sciences. There, she was a professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, and also taught anthropology at the University of Southern California, at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and at Georgetown University. And she is also fellow of the World Academy of Art and Sciences and a member of the Board of Trustees, my colleague at the Board of Trustees. We have enormous happiness to receive you now, and when you agreed to participate at the seminar. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Saulo. Thank you, Manuelita. Thank you to everybody. I am very honored to be in the context of scholars and, in a way, kin. I consider Latin America kin. That is relatives. So I will proceed. I will try to share. Okay, the
Yes,
question
yes.
I am considering here is Latin American regional integration possible? Let me put it in the context of today's world. We are witnessing the phasing out of a unipolar power and the rise of non-military, more inclusive alliances, for example, BRICS. And we also see that as the West is aging, the East is rising, a youthful Africa is decolonizing. These are important events. Another point is social media. There's always the negative talk about social media. I would say that it empowered the publics globally, and people are expressing themselves separately from their governments, sharing more with each other across national borders. And that is a fundamental change today that was not available to them. So there is a rise of public voices without borders. Yes, there is fake news and all the other negative things, but this is in and of itself a new, accessible empowerment that's sometimes turning into revolutions. There is increasing militarism. As we all know, war is a marketplace of weapons. Innovations in military technology, we see it tested before our very eyes, in full view. Innocent people, and particularly children, are targeted or become collateral damage. Warfare uses mercenaries paid to kill. Remote technology is deployed to precisely locate and assassinate leaders instead of the dramas played out in the past on our screens, the hanging of Saddam and the goring of Gaddafi. There is now precise targeting and elimination. We also, I think this was hinted at, we are moving from a kind of diplomacy which I call classic diplomacy, that used to depend on the language proficiency of the people they serve, a stress on cultural knowledge that made it an art and a science of socio-political relations. This has been replaced by heavy-handed negotiation, making deals with self-interest anchored in power and hierarchy. There are political games being played in our full view, games that involve strategy and tactics by the big powers. Russia plays chess and excels in it. The US and the UK have always been playing Monopoly. Increasingly, this is without success, as decolonizing is continually in process. China builds on its Silk Road past as it maintains military strength, builds bridges and alliances with East and South, mastering technology and economics. There are two conditions of concern here. There is, as was mentioned by almost everybody, poverty is on the increase, but also there is a war. And these are two conditions that lead to pushing populations out of their homeland, seeking safety, food, and work. So I ask the question here, where does Latin America find itself? As has been said very articulately before me, immigration and emigration is a nightmare. It's existing in the, Latin America exists in the shadow of the United States. But before I proceed with comments on Latin America, let me go to Egypt and the Arab world, not because to provide a particular model, but for perspective. The Arab world is composed of 222 Arabic-speaking countries, different economic levels, natural resources. They share historical developments, they share early Christianity, they share Islam and other religious sects, ethnic groups. They are represented by the League of Arab States. Sharing a language, however, is a very important thing because it's a means for the people to share significant forms of expression from drama, literature, poetry, standard media, and of course now social media. And linguistic research has shown us how a language or sharing a language shapes as well as expresses perception of the world. So the Arab world, encompasses several ways of life in a complementary way. There was nomadic to settled, and of course the nomadic and the settled combined began global trade that links continents long before theories of globalization emerged and long before MBA was introduced in universities. In 1952, we have the Egyptian Revolution that saw the rise of a charismatic and popular leadership in Nasser, dismantling royalty, ending physically ending British occupation, not its influence, but its physical presence inside Egypt, and nationalizing the Suez Canal. Unity marked by a new sense of identity raged throughout the Arab world and beyond. It was shown in Turkey, in Africa, and everywhere. Some of us who are old enough to remember the non-alignment movement of Nasser, Nehru, Tito that took the world by storm and awakened developing nations. In all, this is a period, it had turmoil, but the people felt that there is hope. Then we have the People's Revolution, which I see as a range between 2011 and 2013. There are 2 points that make up the formation and completion of a revolution. I consider it nothing less than street democracy. The people as Egyptians, Muslims and Christians, Copts, of course, rose against Mubarak, the president then, and then rose against Morsi, and from the street installed Sisi, the present-day president, as their president. They would not leave the street until their demands of changed leadership took place. Sisi is a level-headed man. He is very far from the charisma of Nasser, but a level-headed man. He's from local Cairo, and he took office and embarked on a path of development that brings Egypt to the future. That is the goal, is to bring Egypt to the future. The model he used combined national sovereignty, strong defense, and bilateral investment exchanges with other nations across the globe on the basis of mutual benefits. There was a reaction to an Islamic identity that was pervasive in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which ended up marginalizing Copts. And instead, he gave Egyptians back an identity of a tapestry woven into one Egyptian identity that includes Muslims and Christians, which was rooted, of course, in their Egyptian history thousands of years ago. Such a reincorporated identity was very appealing to many, and it continues to be successful. The fervor previously brought about by Nasser of Arabist leanings gave way to Egypt being the mother of the world. Both Nasser and Sisi were effective in the programs of their times, but neither program led to a real regional integration per se. So what are the elements that, this is just I put together, we can add points from previous panelists, the shared language, complementary resources, diversity, incorporating diversity while preserving it, a shared religion or an ideological encompassing the region, defense of regional sovereignty, public participation, while protecting, preserving, and incorporating indigenous knowledge. So let's go back to Latin America, or forward to Latin America. Latin America possesses many of the elements identified earlier and more. Migration for livelihood is a prominent challenge, as has been very articulately presented. So I ask the question, would regional integration be a framework to regulate such waves that are causing major border problems? Would regional integration give digital access, for instance, within the region, a pooling of resources, a sharing of services, which include social, health, education? Can it regulate measures to deal with climate change and protect the environment? I think all of these factors are the challenges of today. Can regional integration be achieved without, which I consider very critical, homogenizing the rich diversity of peoples and environments? Can it preserve indigenous knowledge as it promotes scientific research? Can it preserve the diverse, rich cultural traditions? In other words, I'm saying there is no one size fits all even as we propose regional integration. Variation among regions must be preserved and studied, and any model for a regional integration has to take in consideration the unique properties of that region while dealing with global issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fadwa. We have time to discuss, and I would like to start offering to the panelists a question posed by Jaleel Exine. How does the emergence of BRICS impacts multilateralism, and what's the role of the G77 plus China plays in the emerging multipolar world? Manuelita, did you want to
No,
complement?
sorry, it was a mistake.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I would like to ask for all the panelists to try to discuss this issue posed by Jaleel Exine, the BRICS, the G77 plus China, and what will happen with the world after this. We can start with Danielle, Neantro. Danielle?
Okay. I'd like, as an economist, I'd like to say that when I am talking about integration, regional, international, we are talking about, of course, regional integration. We are talk, of course, there are paths that we follow, like European Union. I'm talking about economic sense. Let's go to the question. This is another concern about me. So I am talking about economic integration. You don't need to talk about languages and so on. You see in Latin America that we are a good relationship with our neighborhoods. We don't share the same language, so we have a good relationships. But about this kind of conversation, of course, China is a big player nowadays, and BRICS can compete with the center countries in an economic sense. And maybe, I don't know, because China is so different how can I say, anthropologically speaking, so different from Brazil and Russians and so on. But in economic sense, China could be is a big player nowadays, economic big player, and could interfere in the flows of trade, as we can see, and the flows of political strength. So I believe that we are seeing a new way of trade and economic relations comparing to the past, comparing to Washington Consensus and so on. So I will not to follow more. I will let Neantro Saavedra talk something if you want. Thank you.
Please, dear Neantro.
Hi, thank you. Well, I don't, from my perspective, I don't think we can talk about the economic relations in isolation, because the causes for this this fracturing of the world, as I termed it, they are not purely economic. Perhaps partly, but not purely economic. There are other motives, strategic, geopolitical, ideological. And in the case of the BRICS, of course, the BRICS is not purely an economic aggregate either. It's not a case of pure regional integration. Of course, the countries are very dispersed in the globe, but it's a group that initially had economic motivation. Yes, well, everybody knows the story of Goldman Sachs analyst who coined this term, and then the countries that were named, they decided to take seriously this name. I think that in the current context, the BRICS are really very useful. They constitute, as I called in my presentation, I say that the future requires adaptive strategies and renewed commitment to collaborative solutions. That was in my last slide. BRICS is a good environment to pursue that kind of solution. Of course, we see it is imperfect because what we have seen is mostly every nation going after its own survival in this situation, rather chaotic. But still, we can see some elements. For instance, President Lula of Brazil in recent days, he has had relatively long telephone communications with Narendra Modi of India, who feels India also is in a rather similar predicament than Brazil, with President Putin of Russia, with President Xi Jinping of China. And all this is within the country. They have always been discussing whether the BRICS can have some kind of collaboration. I think in the case of China, President Xi Jinping, he indicated during that conversation, which happened yesterday, I think, that China is very much open to strengthen commercial relations with Brazil. In the case of India, already during today's TV address by President Lula, he said that in January there will be an economic mission going from Brazil to India. He hopes to take as many as 500 businessmen to India. So I think the BRICS is proving itself to be to have some potential. Let's see what happens, of course. Group G77 is a much more diffuse organization. I don't see much what it can do in the current situation. That is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Neantro. Professor Fadwa, do you want to consider?
Yes, thank you. I think that new forms take a long time to develop. particularly in the shadow of this overwhelming unipolarity and militarism, new forms rising that are proposing alternatives will take a while to develop. But I consider to be the providing an alternative is one of the most important aspects. That is, providing an alternative to the present day forms, the militarism, NATO, all these alliances that are there to for resources, for economic exploitation, for improvement of military. There is an alternative now on the table, the world table. And as it develops, the people of the world are saying, watching something else develop. And I think that in and of itself is significant. Presenting a viable alternative is significant because it broke unipolarity. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not talking about bipolarity. I think that we're not moving to unipolarity to bipolarity. We're moving to unipolarity to alternative structures, experimental perhaps, but if we allow them to flourish, that might be a good solution to the world.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Fadwa. It's a very complicated world and very complicated situation nowadays. I'd like to share some thoughts that I have about the problem. We experience in South America a very difficult relationship with the United States of America, because the United States of America intends to be the biggest partner, economic partner of all the American countries. It's more or less the philosophy of the America for the Americans. And historically, the United States of America did an opposition against Europe to cut the influence of Europe over the former colonies. So they started to develop a great relationship, economic relationship, and the way to do that was all the time unilateral, bilateral. The negotiations were always one by one. And when Mercosur decided to be a different presence in South America, United States reacted against Mercosur, trying to put some potential members out of the initiative. So Chile was seduced by the United States with some commercial advantage to not take part at Mercosur, and the Colombia at the same way, Ecuador at the same way. And we experience a strong opposition from the United States. And Brazil, Argentina initially tried to negotiate with the formula 4+1, and not with the formula hub and spokes that the United States intended to. And all the initiative was created with this kind of difficulty. We tried to create a relationship with Europe, the European Union. It's an alternative. If you see the United States against the regional integration, but in Europe we found a lot of difficulties also, because Europe had fear from the concurrence with agricultural goods, and there are high level of protectionist when you see Europe regarding agricultural products from South America. So the negotiations never take off. A lot of promises. When Trump established the tariffs, we imagined that it could be the chance for the integration between the European Union and Mercosur, and at the first moment it was. But after all, some others interests, some others reasons interfere, and we are at the same place nowadays. And BRICS started to be another way to avoid the opposition from the United States, the difficulties from European Union, because China was the biggest partner of Brazil, of Paraguay, of many countries here in South America. We have complementary complementarity with Russia. Let's go ahead, and we know that the multilateralism put some countries in position of advantage, but some others in position of disadvantage, like United States feel themselves nowadays with the losses of jobs and so on. And when the United States call for the call against the multilateralism, they call for a new order in which they could be better situated, better positioned. And we know that. We know that they have a strong fear from the advance of Mercosur, the advance of Mercosur and European Union integration, and against they are against BRICS also, because they know that BRICS can create a currency, an internal currency, and with this dollar could lose its position as commercial trade currency, and it's a war we experience nowadays. A country like United States trying to create a new economic order for their um, goals or wills. And but like China told a week, we have time. We have time. Let's see what will happen. It's the BRICS are now involving the Arab states because we have a horizon of commercial relationship of new roads, and this kind of mobilization is not what European Union or even the United States desire nowadays, because it's this kind of new world order could be not so interesting to them. Let's see. We have time. Let's see what will happen. Brazil is fighting in this game, playing the game, with China, with Russia. Let's see what will happen. I believe that in more 10 years the world will be very different. Not and the position of the United States could be very different also. Let's see what will happen. I don't know what you think about this, but can see the Arab world closer than South America than before, closer with BRICS than before. We admitted the Saudi Arabia, but with the opposition of the United States, Saudi Arabia is not so sure about the entrance of the bloc, but we put Iran inside the bloc. It's a very controversial decision because the United States is an enemy of Iran. So United States could be enemy of the BRICS for this reason. We don't know. Let's see what will happen. The world is transforming. So let's see. Dear Manuelita, do you want to talk something? We can give the floor for each panelist to finish. What do you think?
Thank you, dear Saulo. I was wondering about your talk and all the panelists. I'm very inspired by the talks and thinking about a lot of things. When you look to the history, we see that the regional integration always comes with the economy as the goal. And then the social values, the fundamental rights come later. Maybe it's time to put it together. I mean, to try to rebuild a design for the economic order nowadays combine it to the democratic and social values. For me, this is the great challenge that we have today, because we are watching this crisis here in Brazil with the United States. Okay, it's something economical, but also it comes with something related to democracy. And we have to expand our relations, to rebuild the multilateralism, to try to combine, not only, you just talked, dear Saulo, about Iran, and we need to combine the economy with democratic countries also. For me, this is the great challenge that we have. And the Professor Rosalía, when talked about our region, when she talked about the Latin Americans, she mentioned, she's not here anymore, but she was great when she mentioned the democracy values. The democracy in danger now. And in Latin America, democracy is always in danger. And one aspect that puts it in danger is the United States. And we have to lead, to cope with other countries, to go ahead with this lack of hope that you mentioned, to go ahead with our biodiversity, that's our biodiversity, our economy, and our democracy. I mean, it's not easy. And I like to start the regional integration in a way to put it together with the other step that always come. We have the social charter here at Mercosur, the social charter, and also the Charter of Fundamental Rights at EU, European Union. Always you have to think about democracy, about the human values, about the human rights. It's fundamental rights and everything. Now, maybe it's time to rebuild Latin America, to wake up, because we did not have a war to build the regional integration. But now we have a kind of war going on here, and maybe it's time to put this war, combining this aspect to rebuild this order, not only thinking about not only thinking about economy, but more than ever, thinking about democracy. This is my thoughts right now, and thanks so much to the panelists, and we can give the floor for each one to final remarks. Thank you so much.
Starting with Danielle, the first one. Ms. Rosalía took the flight, so she's not
Okay.
with us anymore.
I'd like to thank you very much. It was a wonderful talking and to share these points of views will help us and help us to spread the knowledge abroad. I believe that this way of talking, internet helps this. Thank you very much for you all.
Thank you. Professor Neantro?
Yes, well, as Danielle, I also was very happy of sharing these discussions with all of you. It has been very enriching. Now, I want to say a few other words. I am an economist, but I will be the last one to say that all of this that we are living through is mainly related to economics. I do not believe that for a second. I think that all these things are related. The economy, the environment, human rights and democracy, of course, geopolitics, which means, well, trying to have influence over more and more territories, this fight for areas of influence. The European Union, which is appear as economic, but was actually founded upon the understanding from France and Germany that they could not keep fighting for another century, as they had done in several wars before that. In the case of Mercosur also, the rivalry between Argentina and Brazil, with the dictatorships in both sides, was becoming very dangerous. And you may not know, well, we in Latin America, we know that for you, I don't know, in Egypt, other countries, both countries were seriously considering developing nuclear weapons. And at the same time that there was the creation of this Mercosur, also there was an agreement between both countries to abandon those pretensions and to join the non-proliferation treaty. So looks economics, but there are many other things that are going on. And so the current economic policies of Mr. Trump, they are closely connected to his other policies that have to do with the environment, with geopolitics, his desire to create a fortress America, encompassing Greenland, Panama, Canada is possible. And is related, of course, with the forthcoming confrontation, eventual, I think, unavoidable confrontation with China, so as to have a fortress. In that context, we in South America, Latin America in general, we are in a very bad position because we are seen as part of that fortress America that not only Mr. Trump, but people who think like him envision. So I think we'll be fooling ourselves if we believe that this is mainly economic. We need to think in broader terms that have to do with all these things, even artificial intelligence, which is of course one of the latest battlefields. Well, just we could keep talking about that for the entire afternoon and beyond, but just to some thoughts to conclude. Thank you very much.
But it's
Thank
always
you.
wonderful to hear from you, dear Neantro. Yeah. Bringing some gifts from your intelligence. And
Great.
Professor Fadwa, you have
Yes,
the final
yes.
words. Yes, Lord.
In this conference, we heard about a crisis in democracy and a crisis in multilateralism and a crisis in almost everything. This is a moment that can be captured by the peoples of Latin America, the peoples of Asia, and the peoples of Africa to introduce a viable alternative. I would not sit in the shadow of these crises and say, I want to introduce things that failed or improve them. I want to reintroduce ideas and concepts that respond to the needs of the peoples, of the publics of the world. So I would say capture the moment and move forward with alternatives.
No doubt. Well, let's congratulate all the panelists and say thanks to all to stay to share ideas and thoughts and feelings with us today. And in name of the World Academy of Art and Science, we say thank you for all, thank for all the audience that stay here with us today at the internet also. Thanks to all the World Academy staff that worked so hard to allow this transmission. Harini, thank you very much. Vazuji, thank you very much. And our General Secretary Janani, you were wonderful. And all the support. Gary, our CEO, offered all the support to us, allowing all the staff to work to help us. And we did this meeting basically to create more proximity between the Latin America fellows, to put some potential fellows in our meeting for a future invitation, nomination. Maybe we probably will nominate Professor Kenneth Williams, he's American, for associate fellow in the future, and to put also all the fellows of the World Academy of Art and Science from the whole world together to share these very important themes. We discussed democracy at the first panel. We discussed artificial intelligence yesterday, and today we discussed regional integration. Themes of are at the first level of worries nowadays. Themes that are promoting a lot of thoughts and discussions and related to the transformation of the world, the current transformations of the world, and we are very proud to take part on it. I would like to say thanks for Manuelita, Hermes, Rosa, Oliveira, from he belongs to the organizing committee, Neantro, Saavedra-Rivano, also Danielle, Sandi, also Heron Gordilho, also I forgot someone.
No, everybody.
No, it's so thank you all. And
You
Manuelita,
forgot
last words.
Thank you, Saulo. You forgot
Okay.
yourself. Thank you.
Yes, I belong to the organizer. We are all fellows of the World Academy of Art and Science. Thank you. So thank you all. We finished here our transmission. Till the next seminar. the fourth edition in the future. Thank you very much.